you should probably expect spoilers. She's the most sexually provocative badass senorita in video game history. And what's more is, she totally knows it. Who that? Come on, man.
Bayonetta, oh Lord. Bayonetta, Bayonetta, oh Lord. Bayonetta.
Towards the rear end of 2009, Bayonetta seductively danced her way into the hearts of the gaming community and proved to us that you can have a female lead character with sex appeal who remains dominant, strong, but most importantly respected. Bayonetta became iconic and was honestly a breath of fresh air in a sea of fictional female characters who all looked very sexy but lacked any relevant substance to match that sex appeal. Bayonetta was able to evenly resonate with female and male gamers alike, and I can't think of many characters who have achieved such a harmonious fanbase as she has. For me, it almost feels like Bayonetta could do no wrong. Actually no, I tell a big fat stinking lie. There is one thing about Bayonetta that gives me an absolute migraine, and that is her backstory. Like seriously, I can't get my brain around that shit, man. I have no idea what's going on. It's confusing as hell. And that's left me in a bit of a pickle because I need to explain it for this episode. If only there was somebody who could help me out with this.
Right, DiGi. Here, are you doing an episode on Bayonetta, man?
ShayMay! Perfect timing, my friend. Actually, I am doing an episode on Bayonetta. Say, do you want to help me out?
Oh, yeah, no, I'd love to.
Wicked. Alright, be a good chap and explain to everybody what the backstory is about.
Shit. Bayonetta is an Umbra witch, a clan of witches that guarded a mysterious power known as the Left Eye of the World. During the witch hunts 500 years ago, the Umbra witches were all but wiped out. Bayonetta awakens at the bottom of a lake in the present day, unable to remember anything. She travels to Vigrid to discover the truth about her past, where she meets a young girl named Cereza. Cereza mistakes Bayonetta for her mum, implying a resemblance between the two, and yeah, I'm not fooling you, am I? Cereza is Bayonetta as a kid. So, it turns out that the game's villain is the Lumen Sage Father Baldur, who is a father both in the sense that he's a clergyman and also that he's Bayonetta's dad. He plans to resurrect Jubileus the Creator by reminding Bayonetta of who she is by showing her Cereza, which will somehow allow her to awaken as Jubileus' left eye, while Baldur himself becomes the right eye. Now, already you would be hard pressed to fit this into a Twitter bio, but we're still not done yet. You see, Bayonetta 2 revealed that Baldur wasn't such a mad bastard after all. He was in fact possessed by a.a, the god of chaos. a.a possessed a younger Baldur after he travelled with Bayonetta forward in time after she had been sent back in time after having already defeated his older self because a.a.'s evil half Lopter killed Bayonetta's maw. So basically, Baldur goes forward in time, then back in time, and then brings Cereza forward in time so Bayonetta could be sent back in time later on. And God almighty, this is fucking mental! Did you get all that, mate?
Oh yeah, loud and clear, Shay. Cheers, thank you.
You weren't listening, were you?
Not a word of it.
Visual design.
Bayonetta's look switched up moderately from Bayonetta 1 to Bayonetta 2, though thankfully she's retained the same vibe in her new outfit that was present in the old one. This allows for a change in visual style without sacrificing what made the character appealing in the first place, and I have to commend Platinum Games for being able to pull off a character redesign as smoothly as this. So, in light of her new look, we'll be focusing on the Bayonetta 2 design while making short callbacks to her old look, just for comparison's sake. The first thing you need to know about Bayonetta is she's actually 90% naked. That outfit she's wearing? Yeah, that's her hair. Her magically wicked weave can change and form however she pleases, so she tends to cover her body with it. The gloves, glasses and boots are all physical items added to the look, as is her jewellery, which probably originated from Claire's accessories.
Aha!
Bayonetta's hair is closely linked to her magical powers. Not only does she make her clothes out of it, which must save her a bloody fortune at Topshop, but she also uses it to attack her enemies. By using her hair as a conduit, she is able to summon and control infernal demons. She often uses this in her Wicked Weave attacks, where she manifests part of a demon to finish off her combo for her. Because her hair is also used to make her clothes though, summoning demons will result in Bayonetta losing more and more of her outfit. And that is why there's a perfectly good explanation as to why she's naked. I really love Bayonetta's design in the sequel. While the beehive do gives her a really distinct overall shape, I think that the shorter hair, the feathery stole and the padded shoulders give her a real air of sophistication. She's a big flashy show-off, but she's also classy as hell, and that's just Bayonetta all over.
Yeah, I have to admit, I do prefer her shorter hairstyle instead of the beehive look. It just seems to fit her better.
Aye, although, having said that, I think that the beehive do made more sense from a design perspective.
Oh, how so?
In her original design, her hair came down to the nape of her neck so that it could make her suit. Her shorter hair doesn't make quite as much sense, as it's not connected to the rest of her clothing.
Oh, I see. So, hang on a minute. For her Bayonetta 2 outfit, where's the hair for that bodysuit coming from then? No!
Moving swiftly on then, an aspect of Bayonetta's design that I'm really taken with is her proportions. They're exaggerated to a ridiculous degree. Her limbs are incredibly long and spindly, drawing the viewer's attention towards them. Attention is also directed towards her hands and feet by her pistols, which are all oversized and elaborately designed, rimmed with gold and studded with multicoloured jewels. This all makes perfect sense, as she's a brawler. Her bullet arts are all about punching and kicking things. Her mad proportions also serve to give Bayonetta a very haughty demeanour, as she's often looking down on everybody she's talking to like she's Boa Bloody Hancock. She often has her back arched and her shoulders thrust extravagantly behind her. She has thin, piercing eyes, a strong nose and a fondness for makeup, which combine to give her an air of maturity and experience, amnesiac though she may be. Finally, she has a commanding voice, with perfect diction and a very proper English accent.
Could you dispense with the riddles and just tell me what these sodding eyes actually are?
Putting all of this together, Bayonetta looks and sounds completely full of herself. She dominates any scene that she's in through her looks alone, and it takes a pretty special character to draw attention away from her.
One thing I want to home in on before we wrap up this section is Bayonetta's ability to quadruple wield weapons. The concept of using 4 weapons at once takes her already over the top design and blasts it out towards Jupiter somewhere. It's the finishing touch to the character's look, and it tells you exactly what you need to know about Bayonetta. She came here to kick so much ass that busting 2 guns just ain't going to be enough. The first game saw Bayonetta using Scarborough Fair, a set of 4 guns, dark red in design with golden accents. By Bayonetta 2, these guns were replaced by a different set of 4 guns called Love is Blue, naturally being blue in shade. Bayonetta herself has an extremely dark colour scheme since she's draped in long black hair, so having her equip 4 dark red weapons to each limb made it somewhat difficult to pinpoint the guns, especially if she was in a heavy firefight. The switch to a cooler colour like blue gave Bayonetta's weapons much more visual presence on the battlefield, and it became easier to track within the fast-paced movements of her fighting style. Overall, it feels like Bayonetta's first design set the tone for who the character was, and it became a memorable enough design so that we wouldn't forget her in a hurry. Then Bayonetta 2 came in with a design that refined a few key points in her so that now she was visually sitting just where she needed to be. Quite frankly, they nailed it. I wouldn't change a thing about her. Aside from maybe give her that new wave mullet they showed off in the concept drawings, because that shit is screaming 1980s party vibes. I think that pretty much wraps up this section now. We've actually covered quite a lot here already.
Mate, aren't you forgetting something? Like, you, of all people.
No, I don't think so. Oh yes, I actually forgot to mention she has an absolutely fantastic ass.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Brilliant,
Cracking
superb,
ass.
wonderful, absolutely
magnifique,
amazing,
molto
10
bene.
out of 10.
Personality.
If there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I'm a big prude. Normally, if a character is sex appeal for sex appeal's sake, I find that it often turns me away from that character. So when I got Bayonetta for the Wii U, having not played it in 5 years, it wasn't without some trepidation. I was worried that my opinion of Bayonetta might have changed for the worse. When I started playing though, I immediately remembered why I loved her so much. It's all thanks to Bayonetta's personality. Simply put, her sex appeal complements her character rather than distracts from it. Bayonetta is completely aware that she's smoking hot, and she has a lot of fun with it. She's confident and totally in control, and that allows her to be a complete show-off. Would somebody realistically go into battle wearing high heels, makeup and a skin-tight catsuit? No, of course they wouldn't. But would Bayonetta? Of course she bloody would, it's Bayonetta! She seems to know that she's in a ridiculous, over-the-top action game. The first thing she does in her debut appearance is dress up in an overdramatic nun costume before spanking some angels and dancing on tombstones. She also exchanges banter with the various angels that she comes across, responding to their prophecies with dismissive ridicule. Even among the Umbra witches, Bayonetta is clearly something special, with only Jean and Rosa being able to keep up with her. Her competence combined with her cheeky personality lends the character this intoxicating sense of fun. You're not just playing a game where you beat up angels, you're playing a game where you beat up angels and look stylish as hell doing so. Bayonetta's effervescent personality complements that perfectly, letting both her and the player strut their stuff. Ladies?
Without much of a surprise, I'm from the opposite end of the spectrum in that I do like to see a little sex appeal in my entertainment. We are humans after all, and believe it or not, it's within some of our natures to be drawn to the subject. Crazy, innit? That said, I began to dislike the shallowness used within excessive amounts of sex appeal. Now I find it's more appropriate when the appeal is presented with an addition to a character's personality and not just a marketing tool thrown onto a character to sell copies of a product. I like the naughty stuff, but you've got to have some class, man, even if you're waving tits and dicks around. So what I find interesting about Bayonetta is how the character is able to be someone that both me and Shay can conveniently meet in the middle on. Bayonetta parades her sex appeal around not because it's an afterthought just to get you wet or hard, but because it's a personality trait rooted into her carefree spirit. She's powerful as hell and loves to toy with you, knowing there's jack shit you can do to stop her. It's like the almightiest of fuck the police mentalities, and I just love how strong it makes her look.
I absolutely agree, although Bayonetta definitely has her softer moments as well. For example, the interaction between her and Cereza in the first game often shows a softer side to the character. She has to take on a more maternal role, something that she's obviously not used to. She's forced outside of her comfort zone, which makes this relationship a lot more interesting than her relationship with Loki, where she remains snooty and sarcastic throughout. She's often in the back foot when Cereza's around, as she's constantly followed by this wee lassie that can't help but idolise her. She's clearly uncomfortable with the attention at first, constantly trying to shake Cereza off and chastising her when she cries. But as the game goes on, we see Bayonetta become more considerate as she begins to care about Cereza. Through the relationship with one another, Bayonetta gets a bit softer and Cereza a bit harder, and that adds a nice wee bit of character development to both of them. I mean, that adds a nice wee bit of character development to her.
On that point though, I want to dive behind Bayonetta's extravagant attitude and speculate on something. It does seem like nothing can possibly get Bayonetta down, she is always ready for a defiant response to anything troubling her. But what if there is an insecurity? Not the kinds of insecurities to stop her proceeding with life or anything like that, but what if there's a small part of her that does have a concern resting deep within her heart? For such an upbeat character as Bayonetta, why do the names of her guns always have a bittersweet, sorrowful feel to them? I know they were created by her arms dealer Rodan, but from a point of association, these were items made for Bayonetta, and as such are an extension of her. Scarborough Fair from Bayonetta 1 is named after an old folk song of the same name which details the story of an impossible love between two people. Love is Blue from Bayonetta 2 is also named after a song, that of which details the emotions one goes through when longing for a love bond that won't return. Could it be possible that Bayonetta might be hiding a sense of loneliness, or at the very least, a fear of it? I think it might be, but I'm going to elaborate on this in the next section as we talk about which characters Bayonetta is most importantly connected to.
Importance.
Let's start with Jeanne. Upon regaining her memories, Bayonetta comes to understand that the pair of them are the last of their kind. The witch hunts that occurred 500 years ago pretty much wiped out their entire Umbran clan. This places importance onto Jeanne for the simple fact that if Jeanne were to die, Bayonetta would be entirely alone. Sure, she may have friends outside of their little Umbran circle, but there are no other characters who come from that way of life, and therefore can't connect to her the way Jeanne does. Bayonetta is portrayed as the character who is always in control of things and never lets her emotions get the best of her, but during Bayonetta 2, when it seemed like she was too late to save Jeanne's soul, Bayonetta showed a level of panic that we hadn't really seen from her in the series so far.
Jeanne. Jeanne, get up. You're going to be late. Jeanne, it's time. Get up! Please, Jeanne! Wake up!
I imagine the realization that she could potentially lose something so familiar started to set in, and it scared her. This scene allowed us to truly see Bayonetta at her most emotionally vulnerable. We have to remember that Bayonetta is a witch and therefore lives far longer than that of regular humans. There are not many other characters who could accompany Bayonetta through her life, with Jeanne being the only possible relatable companion for the long years ahead.
If that's the case, it might also explain Bayonetta's treatment of Luca and Loki. Luca is clearly a character that Bayonetta has a lot of affection for. She'll never miss a chance to annoy him, constantly calling him Cheshire and using her witch time to wind him up. However, there's clearly a rapport between the two characters, as shown by the lollipops that Bayonetta often eats. Luca gives Cereza her first lollipop as a child, and the fact that they're her favourite treat even 500 years later shows just how fond she must be of that memory. I'm not sure if I'd call it romantic, but there's an undercurrent of attraction between the two that neither can ever capitalise on. While Luca is going to become old and grey eventually, Bayonetta's just going to keep living indefinitely. This would explain Bayonetta's behaviour towards him. She obviously considers him a good friend, but she keeps him at arm's length. She rarely shares any genuine emotion with him, instead keeping her true feelings hidden behind sarcasm and pithy wit.
So basically what you're saying is Bayonetta's really tsundere?
Yeah, kind of. Despite her reluctance to let her human companions get close to her, like the namesake that she gives Luca, Bayonetta is a cat. She keeps teasing and annoying her friends, making out that she doesn't want them around, and pretending that she can get along just fine without them. At the same time though, she seems kind of lost without their company, and she seems perfectly happy to hang around with even Enzo.
Jesus, you really get into this shit, don't you?
Now, Loki, on the other hand, is a character that Bayonetta never really becomes close with. She clearly cares about him, as she does seem to be a big old softie at heart, but even at the end of the game, she refuses to call him by his real name, instead insisting on calling him Little One. However, despite the relative distance between the two of them, Bayonetta still sees in Loki a potential friend. Loki, like Bayonetta, is immortal, and she makes sure to promise him that they'll meet again, in her own truculent way of course. I don't quite buy that this is because of what they are to each other. There's never really a moment where the two bond tightly enough for me to believe that they are determined to keep in touch. I think instead that Bayonetta befriends Loki because of what might be. She will almost certainly outlive Luca and Enzo, and there's also the chance that she might outlive Jeanne as well. Maybe, by promising Loki that they'll meet again, she might find herself with a friend once more, centuries or even millennia into the future. And all of this implies that, at her heart, Bayonetta is a lot lonelier than she really lets on. Little One is a callback to her nickname for Cereza, just as Cheshire is a callback to her favourite childhood toy. These continual connections back to her life as Cereza, back to before she was this immortal, untouchable superheroine, show that Bayonetta is often longing for her childhood. There's a yearning there. Bayonetta seems to want to return to a simpler time when she was a child and could rely on her parents, her future self, and even her best friend Cheshire to be there for her at all times.
Bayonetta's connection to her father Balder is probably the bond filled with the most sorrow. As we learn towards the end of Bayonetta 2, in an attempt to stop the antagonist Aesir, Balder became the host to Aesir's soul and knew that eventually somewhere down the line he would more than likely become corrupted from the evil energy now residing within him. He asks Bayonetta to be the one to kill him if ever that day should come, to which she agrees to, not just because she's the only one powerful enough for the task, but technically from her timeline's perspective, she's already fulfilled that promise. It's a sad and terrible circumstance to be in, but there's no other way around it, and I'd imagine this would rest heavily on her heart, whether she shows it emotionally or not. With a large percentage of Bayonetta's connections dipping into sad and sorrowful territories, it seems to possibly answer the question why her sets of guns are always named with such bittersweet titles. It could lie purely on a conceptual aspect where the crew at Platinum Games just wanted to address it merely through design, or we could take it one degree further and look into the canon of where the weapons come from within the game's story. Namely, Rodan, the immortal fallen angel who became a weaponsmith. Bayonetta clearly spent a lot of her time hanging around his bar, and therefore he's been privy to a large percentage of her personal life, no doubt getting caught up in a lot of it too, so despite how he claims their connection is based purely on business, he probably does consider her a friend in some weird shape or form. For him to name those guns as such seems to suggest that he might be aware of Bayonetta's personal fears and references them accordingly. It could be considered as a means of mutual understanding between the two of them. He provides the tools that Bayonetta uses to not only keep the world safe, but to furthermore fight her own fears with. Or it really is just nothing more than Platinum Games wanting to give a cool sounding title to a set of guns. I don't know. Either way, whether speculative headcanons or not, Bayonetta is the most paramount figure in her series, and the supporting cast seem to help build the deeper workings of the character. At least that's the vibe I'm getting from it anyway.
It's a really interesting angle, and it's one that I hadn't considered before. Bayonetta does a great job looking like she's on top of things, but she's clearly a performer at heart. I wonder just how much of that performance is to show off, and just how much of it is to keep herself guarded.
Conclusion.
As a character, Bayonetta demands your attention, and if you're not paying her that attention, she'll snatch it from you and stamp on your balls for being so disrespectful. She's a show-off, she's extravagant, she's fun, she knows exactly what she's capable of, and she's one of the strongest leading female characters to come out of a video game series in recent years. What's more, her fanbase are such dedicated supporters of the IP. It's no secret that Bayonetta 2 nearly didn't happen due to internal politics and budget cuts. I'll give Nintendo their credit for stepping in and making Bayonetta 2 happen at all, but I really hope SEGA as the main IP holders see just how much love this character gets, and that the future for our beloved Umbran Witch doesn't face such uncertain times ever again.
Basically, give us Bayonetta 3, you zoomers.
No messing around, Bayonetta absolutely gets my Valhalla emblem for being one of my favourite characters from video games in general ever of all time. Just because she's absolutely fantastic and I love her to bits. I love the pants off her. If she actually wore any pants, because, you know, she just wears her hair.
For me, I fell in love with Bayonetta back in 2009. I fell in love with her last year when I picked it up for the Wii U. And I'm happy to say that making this video, I fell in love with her all over again. Bayonetta gets my... I don't have like a Valhalla emblem or anything like that. I do have an erection, and she can have that if she wants.
Okay, good night everybody!
Don't fuck with the witch.
Wagwan everyone, DiGi Valentine here. I just want to send a very big shout out to ShayMay for joining me on today's episode. If you've got the time, then definitely head on over to Shay's channel and check out some of his content. He does in-depth analysis videos on games and hits a lot of nails on heads with his observations, so definitely go and spend some time with him too. Links are in the description, as well as the usual card on the top right and the annotations on his little cartoony face right here. On a side note, if you're new around these parts and are feeling the vibe, then be sure to subscribe to my channel for more Who Dat installments, and I'll catch you all again real soon. Cheers everybody.